Chiron lived alone on the far edge of Orvian 7, a city of smoke, gears, and forgotten dreams. His workshop stood between two giant metal towers, where the wind always carried the smell of oil and burning fuel. Every day he worked in silence, fixing old engines that no one cared about anymore. He did not talk much, not because he could not, but because he had nothing left to say. Machines were easier than people. They broke for simple reasons, and he knew how to fix them. The galaxy had stopped paying attention to quiet men like him a long time ago. That night was different from all others. The air was heavy and strange. The sky glowed with an unnatural red light that flickered like fire. Chiron thought it was just another storm from the outer mines, so he kept working, adjusting the power core of a broken drone. But then a deep roar echoed outside. Not thunder, but something alive, something falling fast. His tools slipped from his hand as the ground shook under his feet. He stepped out of the workshop, squinting through the red storm. Through the swirling dust, he saw fire streaking across the sky. It crashed somewhere close, beyond the scrapyard behind his shop. The crash was loud enough to rattle every metal plate in the yard. Chiron hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his light scanner and ran toward the sound. The wind tore at his coat and sparks of static lightning flashed all around. When he reached the crash site, he stopped cold. There, lying among broken metal and smoking debris, was a woman, or at least she looked half like one. Her body shimmered with silver scales that glowed faintly under the stormlight. From her back stretched two great wings, torn and bleeding, their edges glowing like molten lava. Her eyes were closed, her chest rising weakly. Chiron froze, unsure whether to go closer or run. He had heard rumors of creatures like her, dragon hybrids, born from secret experiments of the Galactic Council. Dangerous, they said. But now, looking at her broken form, she did not look dangerous. She looked hurt, frightened, and alone. Chiron knelt beside her, scanning her with his light tool. The screen showed strong but unstable energy patterns. Her pulse was weak. He reached out carefully to check the wound on her side, but before he could touch her, her eyes opened. They were bright gold, glowing faintly even through the rain. "Please," she whispered, her voice soft and shaking. "They found me." "Don't let them take me." Chiron pulled back, startled. "Who found you?" he asked, but she was already slipping into unconsciousness. A sharp sound cut through the storm, a low hum growing louder. Chiron looked up and saw lights in the clouds. Small ships, black and silent, moving in a search pattern. His scanner beeped with warning, council drones. They were scanning for something, and he had no doubt it was her. He looked down at the strange woman again. Her wings twitched in pain, and a faint spark of fire escaped from the cracks in her scales. She was dying. Chiron's heart pounded. He knew what the council did to people who helped fugitives. They erased them, names, homes, everything. He could stay safe by walking away now. No one would ever know. But he remembered the way she had whispered those words, full of fear. "Don't let them take me." For a moment, Chiron stood frozen in the rain. Then, without thinking anymore, he lifted her into his arms. Her body was heavier than he expected, warm like metal touched by the sun. He carried her back through the storm, stumbling over broken pipes and rusted junk. By the time he reached his workshop, the sky above glowed with searchlights. He shut the doors quickly, locking every bolt. The hum of engines echoed outside. He laid her on his repair table, brushing away sparks from the falling dust. Her wounds were deep, glowing faintly like open fire. He didn't know how to treat something like this, but he had tools, plasma welders, cooling sprays, nanobots. He started working fast, cleaning the cuts and sealing torn scales. The smell of metal and heat filled the room. As he worked, he looked at her face. She seemed peaceful now, almost human, though the faint shimmer of her scales reminded him she was something far more. He wondered who she really was. A soldier, an experiment, or something else entirely. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. Through a small crack in the window, he saw shadows moving across the sky, drones searching every corner. He shut off all lights, switching to low power mode. The workshop went dark, lit only by the soft orange glow from her wings. The scanner on his desk beeped again. They were getting closer. Chiron grabbed a cable and connected it to the main power core, trying to create a shield to block the energy signal. The system overloaded, sparks flying. The old power grid was not made for this. He cursed under his breath and worked faster, rerouting the cables manually. The smell of burning wires filled the air. The scanner flashed red. One drone was right above the shop now. He froze, holding his breath. The hum passed overhead, slow and cold. Seconds felt like hours. Then, at last, the sound faded into the distance. Karen exhaled slowly and leaned back, wiping sweat from his face. His hands trembled. The woman's breathing had steadied, her wings still glowing softly. He looked at her again. He didn't know why he helped her. Maybe because she reminded him of someone he once failed to protect long ago. Or maybe because he was tired of hiding from the world while others suffered. Whatever the reason, he knew there was no turning back now. The council would notice soon that their drones had lost a signal. They would come again. Karen sat beside her, listening to the faint crackle of energy in her veins. The storm outside had calmed, but inside his heart, another storm had begun. One that would pull him back into the galaxy he had tried to forget. He looked at her one last time and whispered to himself, "I guess silence isn't safe anymore." Outside, the night of fire burned across the sky, marking the beginning of something that would change both their lives, and maybe the entire galaxy, forever. The night had turned cold after the storm. Inside the small workshop, only the low hum of machines and the soft breathing of the dragon woman could be heard. Chiron sat on the floor beside the table, his hands still stained with metal dust. His mind was full of questions, but he knew none of them had answers yet. The woman, the dragon hybrid, was still unconscious. Her wounds had stopped bleeding, and her wings now glowed faintly like burning coal under ash. Chiron had wrapped them in heat-resistant cloth and connected small nanobots to repair her scales. The machines beeped quietly as they worked, tiny lights moving over her body. He leaned back against the cold wall, watching her. The firelight from her wings painted strange patterns on the ceiling. She looked powerful even in her weakness, like a weapon made of beauty and danger. Karen couldn't understand what kind of mind would create someone like her. Hours passed. The red storm outside faded, replaced by the silent blue glow of dawn. The city of Orvion 7 was waking up. The sound of engines, sirens, and factory horns filled the air. Karen stood up, stiff from the long night, and went to the window. From there, he could see search ships still patrolling in the distance. The council wasn't giving up. He turned back when he heard a soft sound. The woman had moved. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly gold again. She looked confused, her gaze scanning the room. "You're safe," Karen said quietly. "You're in my workshop." She blinked, trying to sit up, but her body was too weak. Chiron moved closer and helped her lean against the table's edge. "Who are you?" he asked. She looked at him for a long moment before answering. "My name is Lyra," she said, her voice rough but steady. "I didn't mean to bring trouble to your door." "Trouble was already here," Karen replied. "You just made it louder." Lyra smiled faintly, but it quickly faded. "They will come again," she said. "They always do," Karen frowned. "Who are they?" "The Galactic Council," she whispered. "They made me. I was part of a secret project called the Ember Wing. They wanted to create hybrid soldiers, part human, part dragon, powerful enough to control Starfire. But I escaped before they could finish what they started." Karen tried to understand her words. "The Council creating hybrids? That was forbidden after the last genetic war." "Why would they do that again?" he asked. "They said it was for peace," Lyra answered bitterly. "But they wanted control. The hybrids were not free. We were experiments, machines with hearts." She touched the scar on her chest. "They used pain to keep us loyal. When I learned the truth, I ran." Karen looked down, silent for a while. Something about her story stirred a buried memory, of soldiers, of fire, of orders that broke everything he believed in. He pushed the thought away. "You need to rest," he said finally. "You're not strong enough to move yet." Lyra shook her head. "No, if they trace my signal, they will find us both. I can feel their scanners searching already." Karen looked at the small radar on his desk. It flashed weakly with static interference. Something was trying to connect. She was right. He went to his control panel and began typing commands quickly. "I can hide your energy signal," he said, "but my tools are old. I'll need to reroute power through the defense grid. Will that be enough?" She asked. "Maybe for a while," Karen said, "unless they send a full tracking squad." He worked in silence for several minutes, reconnecting wires, boosting the magnetic field, and linking the old workshop's generator to create a masking wave. The lights flickered as the system came online. The scanner's warning light turned green, signal hidden. Lyra watched him closely. "You know how to use military tech," she said softly. "You've done this before." Karen froze. "Old habit," he said quickly, not meeting her eyes, but Lyra kept looking at him. "You were in the war, weren't you?" "I can see it in how you move. You're not just a mechanic." Karen didn't answer. He switched off the console and returned to her side. "You should drink some water," he said, handing her a cup. Lyra took it, her hands trembling slightly. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You could have left me out there. Most people would have." Karen looked at her glowing wings and then at his own rough hands. "Maybe I've seen too many people left behind," he said quietly. There was silence for a moment, broken only by the sound of the generator. Lyra studied his face as if trying to read something hidden deep inside. Suddenly, a loud beep came from the scanner again. Chiron rushed to it and cursed under his breath. "They're scanning this sector again," he said. "They must have picked up a faint trace before I blocked it." Lyra tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Chiron caught her before she fell. "You can't fight them like this," he said. "Then you must run," Lyra whispered. "They'll destroy everything here." Chiron looked around his workshop, the machines he built, the tools, the engines. This place was his world. He had lived here in silence for years, but now, looking at Lyra's desperate eyes, he realized the machines meant nothing compared to what was happening. "No," he said finally. "We're not running. Not yet." He went to the back of the workshop and pulled a dusty tarp from a large metal shape. Underneath was an old war engine, a combat drone from the last galactic war. It was half broken, rusted, and covered in dust, but the core still glowed faintly blue. Lyra looked at it with surprise. "That's Council Tech," she said. "How do you have that?" Karen smiled faintly, though his eyes were serious. "I built it," he said. "A long time ago." He connected a power cable and began to reboot the machine. The engine roared weakly at first, then grew stronger, lights flickering across its body. A voice came from the drone, calm and metallic. Recognition mode active. "Commander Karen of the Lost Fleet detected." Lyra's eyes widened. "Commander?" she whispered. Karen froze for a second, then turned away. "That was a long time ago," he said. "I'm no commander now." But Lyra looked at him differently now. Not just as a mechanic, but as someone who had once led armies. Someone who could fight the Council. Outside, the hum of distant engines grew louder again. The scanners had found something nearby. Karen looked at the ceiling, then back at Lyra. "They're coming," he said. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me first." Lyra's eyes burned bright gold again. "Then let me stand with you," she said, her voice stronger now. "You saved my life. I won't let them take yours." The sound of the first drone echoed outside the workshop. Lights flashed across the windows. Karen took a deep breath and powered up the old war engine. The machines around him came alive once more, gears turning, sparks flying. The silent mechanic was no longer silent. The past he had buried was waking up, and this time he wouldn't hide from it. Outside, the sky filled with fire once more. The real battle was about to begin. The morning light on Orvion 7 was strange. Dark clouds hung low, glowing red from the city's fires and the distant hum of council ships. Karen's workshop, once silent and forgotten, was now alive with energy. Machines hummed, gears turned, and the old war drone stood awake again, its sensors scanning the skies like a loyal guard dog from another lifetime. Karen moved quickly between his tools, checking power levels and weapon systems. Dust and sparks filled the air, but he didn't seem to notice. His hands worked with the precision of someone who had done this many times before, someone trained for war. Lyra sat on the table, still weak but alert. Her eyes followed him quietly. "That machine," she said softly. "It recognized you." "Commander Karen of the Lost Fleet. Who were you before this?" He didn't answer at first. He focused on tightening a loose bolt, avoiding her gaze. Finally, he said, "A man who followed orders that destroyed everything he cared about." Lyra tilted her head. "The Lost Fleet?" "I've heard stories. A group of soldiers who vanished after the Battle of Australis Prime. They said the commander disobeyed the Council's final command." Karen stopped moving. "They said that?" he muttered. Yes, she said. They said he refused to fire on a colony of civilians the council claimed were traitors. The fleet was destroyed and the commander disappeared. Karen looked down at his hands, remembering the screams, the light of burning ships, and the sound of his crew's last transmissions fading into static. The council doesn't like men who ask questions, he said quietly. After that day, I left everything. My rank, my name, my voice. Lyra's expression softened. And now you found your voice again, she said. He gave her a tired smile. Let's just hope it's not too late. The war drone's sensors beeped suddenly, pulling him back to the present. Multiple heat signatures approaching, it reported in a robotic tone. 5 aerial drones, 1 dropship. They found us, Karen said, his jaw tightening. He went to the window. Dark shapes moved through the fog, glowing red like silent hunters. Lyra stood, her wings spreading slightly. The glow from her scales grew stronger. Let me fight, she said. You're not ready, Karen replied. Your wounds are still open. I don't care, she said firmly. If they take me, they'll use me to build more hybrids. I'd rather die free. Karen looked at her for a moment, then nodded. All right, but stay close. He walked to a control panel near the wall and flipped a switch. The floor panel shifted, revealing small defense turrets and magnetic shields. Lights flickered to life along the walls. The old workshop was transforming, from a place of repair to a fortress. The first council drone appeared above, scanning with blue beams. Chiron aimed a pulse rifle from the wall mount and fired. The shot hit the drone's wing, sending it spiraling into a pile of scrap metal. Nice shot, Lyra said. Still got it, Karen replied, reloading the weapon. But more drones followed. They surrounded the workshop, their mechanical voices calling out commands. Surrender the hybrid. Unauthorized harboring of genetic property is punishable by erasure. Lyra's wings burst into flame, lighting the dark workshop like sunrise. I'm not their property, she growled. Karen moved beside her. Then let's remind them of that. The next few minutes were chaos. Plasma fire filled the air as Karen and Lyra fought side by side. The drones fired energy bolts that shattered walls and tore through the roof. Chiron rolled across the floor using cover while his war drone launched counterfire from the corner. Lyra, though weak, used her dragon energy to blast a group of drones with a stream of golden fire. The heat melted metal and sent sparks raining down. She screamed in pain and power, her wings burning brighter with every second. Karen saw the strain on her face and shouted, Don't push yourself too far. I can handle it, she yelled back, firing again. Then came the heavy sound of landing thrusters. The council dropship had arrived. It landed with a crash outside the workshop, kicking up dust and smoke. From it stepped armored soldiers, their suits glowing with blue energy lines. They carried shock rifles and moved with mechanical precision. Karen ducked behind a console, heart pounding. They sent ground units. That's new, Lyra growled softly, her golden eyes narrowing. They won't stop until I'm dead. Chiron loaded his last energy cell and looked at the war drone. Unit 07, defense mode. Target all hostiles! The drone's eyes flashed red. Affirmative, Commander. The battle became louder, the air thick with heat and smoke. Karen fired from cover while the war drone tore through soldiers with heavy blasts. Lyra leapt into the air, crashing through a window and landing outside, her wings blazing. She fought like a storm. Claws, fire, and fury against machines. Karen ran out after her, shielding his eyes from the light. The ground was covered in broken metal and burning debris. Lyra stood in the middle, surrounded by the remains of drones, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. But one last soldier stepped forward, a tall figure in black armor with a glowing council emblem. Surrender, Subject E12, the soldier said coldly. You belong to us, Lyra snarled, flames flickering around her hands. I belong to no one. The soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Karen shot first. The plasma bolt hit the soldier's chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The sound echoed across the scrapyard, and then there was silence. Smoke drifted through the air. The last drone fell, its circuits sparking. Karen lowered his weapon, breathing hard. Lyra turned toward him, her wings folding slowly. You didn't have to help me, she said quietly. Yes, Karen said. I did. For a moment. They just stood there, a tired mechanic and a wounded dragon hybrid, surrounded by fire and ruin. Then Karen looked up at the sky. More ships were coming. He could see their faint lights far above the clouds. "They'll send more," he said. "We can't stay here." Lyra nodded weakly. "I know a place," she said. "A hidden base in the outer sectors. But it's far. We'll need a ship." Karen smiled faintly. "Lucky for you," he said. "I build ships." He looked back at the wrecked workshop, his old home now half destroyed. For years he had lived quietly, fixing broken things. Now, for the first time, he felt alive again, fixing something bigger than machines. He turned to Lyra. "We leave at dawn." As the fires died down, Chiron and Lyra walked back into the broken workshop. The old war drone followed silently, its red eyes glowing through the smoke. Outside, the first light of morning touched the sky, shining on the ruins. The silent mechanic was no longer silent. The war he thought he left behind had just begun, and this time, he wasn't fighting alone. The sky above Orvion 7 was still glowing with smoke from the night's battle. The workshop smelled of burning metal and ozone, and every wall was marked with holes from plasma fire. Chiron sat on the floor beside a broken console, his hands shaking slightly. He hadn't fought like that in years. His body remembered every move, every sound, every command. But it also remembered the pain that came after. Lyra stood near the doorway, her torn wings folded tightly against her back. The faint light from her scales reflected off the metal walls. She looked at Karen, her golden eyes calm but full of questions. "You fought like a soldier," she said softly. "Not like a man who left the war." Karen wiped his face with a dirty cloth. "Maybe you never really leave war," he said. "You just wait for it to find you again." Outside, the faint hum of distant patrol ships echoed. The council would return soon. They always did. Lyra looked at the war drone, which was standing by the door, its sensors still active. "They'll come back in greater numbers," she said. "You know that." "I know," Karen replied. He stood up and looked around the wrecked workshop. The place that had once been his home was now little more than rubble. "This place won't hold another attack. We'll have to move. Where will we go?" Chiron looked at her for a moment before answering. "You said something last night about a crystal. What did you mean?" Lyra hesitated, her eyes darkening. "The celestial crystal," she said quietly. "It's hidden on the dark moon of Vareth. The council created it using ancient dragon fire. It can control every hybrid they made. If they get it, they'll rule every system in the galaxy." Karen frowned. "And if we get it first?" "We can destroy it," Lyra said. "Or use it to free the hybrids. That's why they want me. I'm the only one who can find it." Chiron crossed his arms. "Then that's where we go." Lyra looked surprised. "You'll help me?" He gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't save you just to watch the galaxy burn." For the first time, she smiled back, but it was faint, almost sad. "Then we need a ship," she said. "And fast." Karen nodded and went to the back of the workshop. Behind a heavy door lay a dusty hangar filled with half-finished machines and rusted ship parts. The air was thick with dust and old oil. In the middle stood a small star freighter, broken, but not dead. "This one still has a working drive," Karen said, climbing up to inspect it. "If I can fix the stabilizers and refuel the core, we can make it off-world." Lyra followed him, running her fingers over the metal hull. "It looks old." "It is," Karen replied. "But so am I. They worked together for hours." Chiron repaired the ship's energy systems, while Lyra, despite her weakness, used her inner fire to heat-seal broken panels. The glow from her wings illuminated the dark hangar like a forge. At one point, Chiron stopped to watch her. The firelight reflected in his eyes. "How do you control it?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked down at her hands. "Sometimes I don't," she admitted. "The fire inside me is alive. It listens when I'm calm, but when I'm angry or afraid." She trailed off, her voice breaking. Karen nodded slowly. "Then don't let them make you afraid." Hours later, the ship was ready enough to fly. Karen checked the engines one last time, then turned to Lyra. "We'll launch at dusk," he said, "once the patrols move to the other side of the sector." But before they could rest, the war drone's alarm went off. "Warning," it said in its metallic voice. "Incoming signal detected. Multiple council ships approaching. Distance 8 kilometers and closing." Karen's face went pale. "They tracked us faster than I thought." Lyra's wings flared with light. "Then we fight again?" Karen shook his head. "No. This time we buy ourselves enough time to escape." He rushed to the control panel and activated the defense grid. Energy shields flickered to life around the hangar. Lyra helped him move crates to block the doors. Outside, the low hum of council engines grew louder until it became a roar. Through the cracks in the wall, they saw shadows of dropships descending. Dozens of soldiers surrounded the area. "Seal the hatch," Karen ordered. Lyra nodded, her eyes burning bright gold. The doors slammed shut. The old workshop shook as the first blast hit the shield. Sparks rained from the ceiling. "They're trying to burn through," Chiron shouted over the noise. He ran to the console and adjusted power levels. "The shield won't last long." Lyra placed her hand on the control panel. Her fire energy flowed through it, strengthening the shield's glow. "Go," she said. "I can hold it," Karen stared at her. "You'll overload." "I'll manage," she said firmly. "Get the ship ready." He hesitated for only a moment before nodding. He ran to the freighter, powering up the engines. The lights came on, flickering but steady. The ship rumbled like a beast waking from sleep. Outside, explosions thundered. The shield cracked. Lyra screamed as she pushed more energy into it, her body glowing with fire. Flames spread across her wings. "Lyra!" Karen shouted from the ship. "I said go," she yelled back. The shield finally shattered with a sound like breaking glass. Soldiers rushed in, their weapons raised. Lyra turned toward them, her eyes blazing. She spread her wings wide and released a burst of dragon fire that filled the entire hangar. The shockwave threw soldiers and machines into the air. Karen grabbed the ship's controls and activated the thrusters. The freighter rose slowly, engines shaking the ground. He opened the side hatch and shouted, "Jump!" Lyra, barely standing, ran through the fire and leapt toward the ship. Karen reached out and caught her hand, pulling her inside just as the hangar exploded behind them. The freighter shot up through the roof, debris and fire trailing behind. The city lights of Orvian 7 grew smaller beneath them. Karen pushed the engines to maximum power, breaking through the clouds and into the cold dark of space. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of the ship's hum filled the air. Lyra sat on the floor, breathing hard, her wings flickering weakly. Karen turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but we can't stop. They'll follow." Karen looked out at the stars, his jaw set. "Let them. This time, I'm not running from them. We'll find that crystal before they do." Lyra looked at him, a faint smile crossing her lips. "Then our journey begins." Karen nodded, switching the ship's coordinates to the outer sectors. As the engines roared and stars stretched into lines, Orvian 7 disappeared behind them. The silent mechanic and the dragon woman were now fugitives among the stars, two lost souls carrying the hope of a broken galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, the celestial crystal waited, shining like a secret flame that could save or destroy them all. The stars outside the ship's window stretched into endless lines as Chiron's freighter, the Wraithhawk, glided through hyperspace. The engines hummed softly, the only sound in the quiet cabin. Lyra sat near the viewport, her golden wings dim under the cool blue light. She looked tired but alert, her eyes focused on the vast emptiness ahead. Karen checked the navigation console again. "We'll reach the dark moon of Vareth in 2 hours," he said. "After that, no signals, no transmissions. It's off the grid." "The Council won't find us easily," Lyra nodded, her voice quiet. "Vareth is not just off the grid. It's cursed. My people called it the sleeping void. The energy there. It changes you if you stay too long." Karen frowned. "You've been there before." "Only once," she replied. "Before the experiments. Before I became this." Her claws curled slightly, as if remembering pain. Karen wanted to say something to comfort her, but words didn't come easily to him. Instead, he simply said, "Then we'll be careful." The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was a kind of peace they both understood, two survivors who didn't need to fill the air with noise. When the ship finally dropped out of hyperspace, the view outside turned dark. Vareth hung before them, a black, lifeless moon orbiting a dying planet. Its surface was covered in cracks that glowed faintly with red light, like veins of lava under glass. Karen adjusted the ship's course. "I'll take us down near the southern ridge." Scans show an old outpost there. As they descended through the thin, smoky atmosphere, the radar flickered with interference. "Strange," Karen muttered. "The readings are all over the place." "That's the energy field," Lyra said. "It hides things. Even time feels different here." The ship landed with a rough thud on a patch of black rock. The air outside was cold and thin, and faint electrical sparks danced across the ground. Karen put on a breathing mask and handed one to Lyra, though she barely needed it. Her dragon blood allowed her to survive harsh worlds. They stepped out together. The land around them was silent, except for the low hum of energy coming from deep underground. In the distance stood an old structure, half-buried, covered in metallic vines. It looked ancient, like something built before the first colonies. "That's it," Lyra whispered. "The Temple of Flame. The crystal is inside." As they approached, Karen noticed strange markings glowing faintly on the walls. The symbols pulsed with light whenever Lyra walked near them. It was as if the temple recognized her. "You're connected to this place," Karen said. "It's dragon energy," she replied softly. "We were created from it. It knows what I am." They entered the main chamber. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the sound of faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. In the center of the room stood a large pedestal surrounded by ancient machines. At the top floated a small, glowing crystal, clear as glass, yet burning with inner fire. "The celestial crystal," Lyra said. Her voice trembled slightly. "It's beautiful. And terrible." Karen stepped closer, but stopped when he saw the flickering shadows on the walls. The whispers grew louder. "Something's not right," he muttered. Before Lyra could answer, the crystal flared with light. A pulse of energy shot through the room, throwing them both backward. The machines came alive, spinning and sparking. From the darkness, a shape began to form, a figure made of black smoke and glowing red eyes. Lyra gasped. "No! It's the Guardian!" The creature's voice echoed through the chamber. "No one may touch the flame. Those who do shall burn." Karen pulled his plasma gun and fired, but the shots passed through the creature like mist. The Guardian's shadowy arm lashed out, knocking him across the floor. Lyra spread her wings and unleashed a burst of golden fire. The light burned through the smoke, forcing the creature back for a moment. But the Guardian reformed, roaring like a storm. "You cannot destroy me," it said. "I am the shadow of the first fire." Chiron groaned, pushing himself up. "Then maybe we don't destroy you," he said through clenched teeth. "Maybe we outrun you." He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the pedestal. "You said only you can touch it." Lyra hesitated. "If I do, it could kill me." Karen looked into her glowing eyes. "Or it could save all of us. Trust yourself." For a moment she stared at him, then nodded. She turned toward the crystal, her wings flaring wide. Fire gathered in her hands, golden and blinding. The Guardian roared and lunged at her, but she thrust her hands forward, touching the crystal. A wave of light exploded outward. The entire temple shook as fire and shadow collided. Karen shielded his eyes, the heat searing his skin. When the light faded, he opened them to find Lyra floating in midair, her body surrounded by golden flames. The Guardian was gone, disintegrated into nothing. The crystal now pulsed in her chest, fused into her being. Her voice echoed softly, not just in the air, but inside Chiron's mind. "It chose me?" Chiron stared at her in awe. "You're glowing like a star." She landed gently, her wings brighter than ever. "The power of the crystal is within me now, but it's unstable. I can feel it trying to break free." Karen stepped closer. "Then we'll control it together." "We'll learn how." Before she could reply, the ship's comm beeped. A cold robotic voice came through. "This is the Galactic Council. You are surrounded. Surrender the artifact or face termination." Karen's eyes widened. "They found us again." Lyra looked toward the entrance, where the faint blue lights of approaching ships filled the sky. Her voice was calm but fierce. "Let them come. This time, we're not running." Karen gripped his blaster tightly, his old soldier instincts returning. "Then we fight for the galaxy." As the sound of engines grew louder, Lyra spread her wings, fire swirling around her like a storm. The ground beneath them trembled and the temple walls cracked with heat. The silent mechanic and the dragon lady were no longer just fugitives. They were the spark of rebellion, standing between the galaxy and a power that could change everything. And as the first dropships descended onto the cursed surface of Vareth, one thing was certain. The war for the celestial flame had begun. The surface of Vareth shook under the weight of the incoming ships. From the sky, dozens of council vessels descended like black shadows, their lights cutting through the thick red fog. The air trembled with the roar of engines and the hiss of landing thrusters. Dust and sparks rose in a storm around the ancient temple. Inside, Karen and Lyra stood side by side. The ground vibrated under their boots. Lyra's wings burned with golden light, the energy of the celestial crystal pulsing through her veins. Karen checked his plasma rifle, adjusting the charge. His hands were steady, but his heart raced. "They're surrounding the temple," he said, scanning the radar on his wrist console. 3 squads to the east, 2 to the west. Heavy units up front. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly. "I can feel them," she whispered. "So many minds. Cold, controlled. They're not just soldiers. They're hybrids, too. Like me." Karen's jaw tightened. "Then we free them, if we can." A sudden boom echoed outside as the first blast hit the temple wall. Stone cracked and fire burst from the impact. The doors blew open, and armored soldiers poured in, their visors glowing red. Karen moved fast, taking cover behind a fallen pillar. He fired 3 quick shots, hitting 2 soldiers square in the chest. Lyra raised her hand, and a wave of golden fire swept through the room, forcing the attackers back. But more kept coming. The Council's machines marched forward. Drones, mechs, and weaponized androids, all programmed to kill. Karen gritted his teeth. "There's too many of them." Lyra turned to him, fire burning in her eyes. "Then I'll hold them off. You find a way out." "No," Karen said firmly. "I'm not leaving you." Before she could argue, a heavy explosion shook the ground. A massive war mech, towering and armed with plasma cannons, smashed through the far wall. Its metal frame gleamed in the red light as it aimed at Lyra. The mech's voice was deep and mechanical. "Target located, Dragon Hybrid. Execute order." Lyra spread her wings wide, her fire forming a barrier just as the mech fired. The plasma hit her shield, scattering light in every direction. The impact threw her back, slamming her into a pillar. "Lyra!" Karen shouted, running to her side. She groaned, pushing herself up. "I'm fine," she said weakly, her scales dimming for a moment. The crystal's light flickered inside her chest. Karen aimed at the mech's leg joints, firing multiple shots. The metal sparked, but the machine didn't stop. It turned its cannon toward him. Just as it fired, Lyra screamed, a deep, echoing cry that shook the entire chamber. Fire erupted from her body, forming a massive storm of golden light. The flames wrapped around the mech, melting its armor in seconds. The machine exploded, filling the temple with smoke and heat. Karen shielded his face. When the fire cleared, Lyra stood in the center of the wreckage, breathing heavily. Her eyes glowed like suns. The soldiers outside hesitated, watching in fear. Some dropped their weapons. Others backed away. Karen noticed it too. "They're scared," he said quietly. "You can turn this around, Lyra. They follow fear, but you can give them something else." Lyra looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He stepped forward. "You're not just a weapon. You're a symbol. The galaxy needs hope, not control. If you stand against them, others will follow." For a moment, Lyra hesitated. She could feel the crystal pulsing stronger inside her, power calling her to destroy everything. But Karen's voice grounded her, pulling her back to herself. She raised her hand and spoke, her voice echoing through the battlefield. "Stop fighting! You are not slaves of the Council anymore. The crystal's power belongs to everyone." A strange silence fell. The hybrid soldiers froze. Their glowing red visors flickered, some turning blue. The control signal had been broken. "They're waking up," Karen said in awe, but the moment didn't last. A loud voice came through the comms, cold and sharp. "This rebellion ends now." From the largest ship above, a beam of black energy shot down toward the temple. The ground cracked open, and a new figure emerged from the shadows, tall, armored in dark silver, with a helmet shaped like a serpent. His voice was deep and filled with authority. "Lyra of the Flame," he said, "you have betrayed your creators." Lyra stepped forward, her fire flaring. "I was never yours to control," the figure laughed. "You think you understand the crystal's power? You carry a fragment. I hold the core." He raised his hand, and dark energy surrounded him. The air rippled with tension. The soldiers who had just broken free fell to their knees again, clutching their heads as their implants reactivated. Kyron's heart pounded. "Who is that?" Lyra's voice was low. "The High Inquisitor, the one who made me." Lightning flashed across the cracked sky. The High Inquisitor stepped closer, his eyes glowing red behind the mask. "You were supposed to lead the hybrids under my command. Instead, you run with a human mechanic." He looked at Chiron with disgust. "Pathetic." Chiron raised his weapon, anger flashing in his eyes. You don't get to talk about her like that. The Inquisitor moved his hand slightly, and Karen was thrown back by an invisible force crashing into a wall. Lyra's wings flared as she lunged at him, releasing a blast of fire. But the Inquisitor absorbed it into his armor, the flames vanishing into black mist. He smirked. You cannot burn the void, Lyra gritted her teeth. The crystal inside her glowed brighter, reacting to his power. The ground began to crack under her feet. Karen struggled to stand, shouting, Lyra! Don't lose control! But it was too late. The crystal's power surged through her like a storm. Her body glowed with unbearable light, and her wings expanded, filling the temple with golden fire. The Inquisitor raised his arm to shield himself. You'll destroy everything, Lyra's voice echoed, trembling with both pain and rage. Then I'll start with you. The explosion that followed lit up the entire moon. Fire and shadow collided in a storm that reached the stars. The temple crumbled. The ground split, and ships in orbit shook from the blast. When the light finally faded, the battlefield was silent. Smoke covered the land. Karen crawled out from the debris, coughing, searching desperately. Lyra, where are you? In the distance, through the haze, he saw her, lying on the cracked ground, her wings burned, her light fading. He ran to her side, his heart breaking. Hey, stay with me. Don't you dare give up now. Lyra looked up at him weakly, her eyes dim. Karen, did we win? He swallowed hard. We're still here. That's a start, she smiled faintly. Good, because this isn't over. The crystal's not gone. What do you mean? He asked urgently. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The core. It's still out there. He wasn't lying. Karen's eyes widened as he looked up at the broken sky, where the High Inquisitor's ship disappeared into the dark clouds. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun, and as the winds of Vareth howled around them, the silent mechanic made a promise. He would find the core, save Lyra, and end the Council's rule once and for all. Because this time, the galaxy had a spark worth fighting for. The dark moon of Vareth was silent again, its cracked surface glowing faintly with dying embers. Smoke drifted across the battlefield where the temple once stood. Chiron sat beside Lyra's unconscious form, his hands shaking as he tried to stabilize her breathing. Her wings were torn, her scales cracked, and the golden light from the celestial crystal inside her chest flickered weakly, like a fading heartbeat. He tore a piece of his jacket and wrapped it around her arm, whispering softly, You're not dying on me. Not now. The war drone, damaged but still functional, hovered nearby. Its voice was faint. Vital signs unstable, suggest immediate medical attention. Karen looked up at the smoking horizon. Yeah, he muttered. If there's even a place left to take her. He carried her carefully to the freighter, the Wraithhawk. The ship was scorched from the blast, but still operational. He laid Lyra on a medbed and began scanning her vitals. The readings were unstable. The crystal inside her was leaking energy, burning her from within. She saved the galaxy, Karen whispered, adjusting the controls, and it's killing her for it. Hours passed as he worked, rerouting the ship's power to stabilize her energy flow. Her breathing steadied, but she remained unconscious. Karen sat beside her, staring out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the High Inquisitor was escaping, carrying the core of the celestial crystal. And Karen knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't stop until he got it back. 3 days later, Lyra woke up. The lights in the cabin dimmed as her golden eyes opened. Where are we? She asked weakly. Karen turned, relief washing over him. You're awake. We're still in orbit around Vareth. I couldn't risk jumping to hyperspace while your vitals were unstable. She tried to sit up, groaning. The Inquisitor, did he take it? Chiron nodded grimly. Yeah, he has the core. Whatever he's planning, we can't let him finish it. Lyra closed her eyes, trying to sense the crystal's energy. I can feel it, she said softly. Far away, but still alive. It's calling to me. From the Orion Rift. Karen leaned back, thinking. That's deep space. The Council's fortress is there. It's suicide. Lyra looked at him, her voice steady. You don't have to come. He smirked. You really think I'm letting you face him alone? She gave a faint smile. I was hoping you'd say that. A few hours later, the Wraithhawk shot into hyperspace, streaking across the galaxy. Their destination, the Orion Rift, a deadly region of broken stars and unstable gravity fields. As the stars stretched by, Karen worked on modifying his ship's weapons. He was quiet, focused, his mind full of memories from the war. Lyra watched him, sensing the ghosts in his silence. "You used to fight for the council, didn't you?" she asked softly. Chiron didn't look up. "A long time ago, before I saw what they really were. What made you leave?" He stopped for a moment. "They sent me to burn a colony. Said it was infected with alien DNA. Turned out it was just families like mine. I didn't follow that order." He looked up, his eyes dark. "They called me a traitor. Guess I still am." Lyra reached out, touching his hand gently. "You're not a traitor. You just remembered what it means to be human." For a long time, neither spoke again. The silence between them said more than words ever could. Hours later, the ship dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of the Orion Rift. The view was breathtaking, a sea of floating asteroids, glowing nebulae, and broken planets caught in swirling energy fields. Lightning crackled across the darkness like veins of light. "Beautiful," Lyra whispered. "Beautiful and deadly," Karen replied, checking the sensors. "We're picking up massive energy readings." "That has to be the core," the radar pinged, locking onto a massive signal deep inside the rift. A fortress floated there, black and jagged, surrounded by ships. The emblem of the Galactic Council glowed red on its side. Lyra's expression hardened. "That's it. The Citadel of Void," Karen exhaled. "Looks like the Inquisitor's home." Before they could plan further, an alarm blared. The radar flashed red. Incoming ships. "Council interceptors!" Chiron shouted. Dozens of fighters appeared from the shadows, firing plasma bolts toward them. The Wraithhawk shook violently as explosions rocked its hull. Lyra jumped into the co-pilot seat. "Evasive maneuvers." Chiron grinned slightly. "Already on it." The ship spun sharply, dodging fire. He pulled the trigger, sending twin plasma bolts back at the attackers. 2 ships exploded, scattering debris into the void. But more kept coming. "They're herding us toward the rift," Lyra yelled. "Then we go through it," Karen shouted back. Lyra looked at him like he was insane. "Through the rift? That's suicide!" He smiled grimly. "Then it's a good plan." The Wraithhawk plunged straight into the storm of the Orion Rift. The sky turned violet as gravitational waves twisted around them. Energy storms flashed on all sides. The ship's systems flickered, alarms screaming. Karen gripped the controls tightly. "Hold on!" Lightning struck the hull, shaking the entire ship. Lyra reached out, her wings glowing, channeling energy from the crystal. Her power stabilized the ship's shields, keeping them from disintegrating. Chiron glanced at her in awe. "You're doing it. You're controlling it." Her face was pale but determined. "For now, don't waste it." After what felt like an eternity, they burst out of the storm, straight into the shadow of the Citadel. The massive fortress loomed before them, surrounded by energy rings and glowing with dark power. Karen's jaw tightened. "We found him." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. "No, he found us." A deep voice echoed across the comms, cold, familiar, and cruel. "You survived Vareth. Impressive, but your journey ends here." It was the High Inquisitor. Chiron's grip tightened on the controls. "Not today." The fortress opened its hangar bays, unleashing waves of black drones and warships. The sky filled with fire as the battle began. Plasma bolts streaked past. The Wraithhawk weaved through the chaos, outnumbered but unyielding. Lyra closed her eyes and focused. "I can sense the core. It's inside the fortress, deep underground." Chiron nodded. "Then we get you in." He dove the ship toward the fortress, dodging laser fire and debris. The hull screamed under pressure. Alarms blared. "Brace yourself!" he shouted as they crashed through a hangar wall, sparks flying everywhere. The ship skidded across the metal floor, finally coming to a smoking stop. Karen stood, grabbing his rifle. "We're in." Lyra's wings unfolded, glowing like molten gold. "Then let's finish this." They stepped out into the fortress, surrounded by darkness and the sound of distant machinery. Somewhere deep below, the High Inquisitor waited, and so did the fate of the galaxy. The silent mechanic and the dragon lady had entered the lion's den, and as the fortress doors sealed behind them, the final chapter of their war had begun. The Citadel of Void was silent inside, except for the echo of heavy footsteps and the hum of machines buried deep within its black walls. The corridors were cold, metallic, and alive, pulsing faintly with red light, as if the fortress itself had a heartbeat. Every shadow felt alive. Every corner whispered danger. Karen moved quietly, his plasma rifle ready, his eyes scanning every direction. Lyra walked beside him, her golden wings dim but steady, the faint glow from the crystal inside her chest lighting their path. The air was thick with energy, heavy, electric, almost alive. "He knows we're here," Karen whispered. Lyra nodded. "He's been waiting." They reached a massive circular chamber at the heart of the citadel. In the center floated a huge black crystal, spinning slowly above a deep pit of light. The energy it gave off was suffocating, cold, powerful, and wrong. Lyra's breath caught. "The core of the celestial flame," she whispered. "It's stronger than I imagined." Karen frowned. "That thing feels alive." "It is," said a deep voice from above. They looked up to see the High Inquisitor descending from a platform, his armor glowing faintly with crimson veins. In his hand he held a staff made from dragon bone, topped with a shard of the same black crystal. His eyes burned like two suns of red fire. "Welcome home, my creation," he said, his tone cruel but calm. "You've brought me exactly what I needed. The fragment inside you." They reached a massive circular chamber at the heart of the citadel. In the center floated a huge black crystal, spinning slowly above a deep pit of light. The energy it gave off was suffocating, cold, powerful, and wrong. Lyra's breath caught. "The core of the celestial flame," she whispered. "It's stronger than I imagined." Karen frowned. "That thing feels alive." "It is," said a deep voice from above. They looked up to see the High Inquisitor descending from a platform, his armor glowing faintly with crimson veins. In his hand he held a staff made from dragon bone, topped with a shard of the same black crystal. His eyes burned like two suns of red fire. "Welcome home, my creation," he said, his tone cruel but calm. "You've brought me exactly what I needed. The fragment inside you." Lyra took a step forward, fire gathering in her palms. "You'll never have it." He smiled beneath his mask. "You still think you have a choice? You were built to serve. The fire in your chest belongs to me." Karen stepped in front of her, raising his weapon. "She doesn't belong to anyone." The Inquisitor's voice turned sharp. "And who are you, little human? A broken soldier hiding behind machines? You think you can stand against a god?" "Not a god," Karen said. "Just a mistake that needs fixing." The Inquisitor moved faster than the eye could follow. His staff struck the ground, and a wave of black energy exploded through the room. Karen was thrown backward, slamming into a pillar. Sparks flew from his rifle as it broke apart. Lyra screamed, unleashing a burst of golden fire that met the Inquisitor's darkness in midair. The two powers collided, lighting the entire chamber in blinding color. Fire and shadow twisted together like living serpents. The Inquisitor laughed as he pushed forward. "You can't control the flame inside you. It's already mine." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. "Then I'll burn you with it." Her wings flared wide, her body radiating light. The power of the crystal surged through her veins, spilling across the room. The floor cracked, the walls trembled. For a moment she overpowered him, but the core pulsed, sending out a shockwave that threw her to the ground. Karen struggled to his feet, watching as the Inquisitor raised his staff toward her. "You've done well, Lyra. Your body will serve as the vessel for the full flame." He began pulling energy from the core. Black tendrils of light wrapped around Lyra, lifting her into the air. She screamed as the power tore at her, pulling at the crystal inside her heart. Karen's mind raced. He had no weapon left, only his tools, his instincts, and the courage that had carried him this far. He spotted an exposed control terminal near the core, wires sparking from it. He ran toward it, dodging falling debris. "Hang on, Lyra!" he shouted. The Inquisitor noticed him and snarled. "Stay out of this!" He sent a blast of dark energy, but Chiron dove behind a console, rolling across the floor. He pulled out a plasma torch from his belt and began rerouting the power circuits. "If I can overload the core," he muttered, "maybe it'll break his control." Lyra's screams filled the room. Her wings burned bright, then dimmed again. The black tendrils were pulling the crystal from her chest. "Karen!" she gasped weakly. "Stop him. Please, I'm trying." The Inquisitor turned his attention fully to Chiron now, his voice booming with fury. "You cannot stop what was written in the stars?" He raised his staff to strike, but Lyra suddenly reached out, her eyes blazing gold once more. "Yes, I can." Her fire burst outward, cutting through the black energy. The tendrils snapped. The light returned to her wings, fierce, brilliant, alive. She broke free, landing hard but standing tall. The Inquisitor staggered back, his armor cracking. "Impossible." Lyra looked at Karen, her voice steady despite the pain. "Do it now!" Chiron slammed the plasma torch into the console and twisted the dial to maximum. The core screamed, a deep, otherworldly sound that shook the fortress. Energy surged wildly through the room, lightning-like arcs filling the air. The Inquisitor realized too late what was happening. "You fool!" "You'll destroy everything!" Karen shouted over the roar. "That's the point!" The core exploded in a blinding burst of light and shadow. Time seemed to stop. Lyra spread her wings wide, absorbing the flames that erupted from the core. Her body glowed brighter than ever, becoming pure energy. Part woman, part dragon, part fire. She looked at Karen one last time. "Thank you for believing in me." "Lyra, wait!" he shouted, reaching out, but she was already gone, rising into the air, her form turning into a storm of golden fire. The explosion consumed the Inquisitor, tearing through his armor and reducing him to ash. The blast ripped through the citadel, collapsing its walls, burning through metal and stone. Karen barely made it back to the Wraithhawk. He launched the ship as the fortress exploded behind him, sending waves of light across the rift. For a long time, there was only silence. The storm faded, and the citadel was gone. Nothing but drifting debris and golden sparks in the void. Karen sat in the cockpit, staring at the empty seat beside him. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved them all." The war drone floated beside him, its voice calm and quiet. Energy readings detected. "Unknown source approaching." Chiron looked out the window. A faint shimmer of golden light floated through space, moving toward the ship. It was soft, like a heartbeat pulsing gently. He smiled sadly. "Lyra." The light passed through the ship's hull and settled in the co-pilot's seat. A warm glow, gentle and alive. He could feel her presence like a whisper in his mind. "Chiron, the galaxy is free now. Don't stop fighting for it." He closed his eyes, letting the warmth fill the cold silence of the ship. "I won't," he said softly. "I promise." Outside, the stars burned brighter than before, and the Orion Rift glowed with golden fire, a reminder of the dragon who became light and the silent mechanic who dared to defy the gods. The galaxy would tell their story for ages to come, and somewhere, in the endless dark between the stars, the flame of Lyra still burned, eternal, fierce, and free.